Are we live? You didn't do the count.
Yeah,
muted.
1, 2, 3, go.
Go.
You go.
No, it's not muted. It's flashing. If it's flashing, then it's muted. It's not. No. Okay. Now.
Muted it.
Okay. Hey everybody, it's me, John. Thank you for bearing with our technical difficulties. Welcome to this paint stream. I am here with not only Joe,
Hey,
but my Monpok partner in crime, Andrew Overton.
Hello.
Oh, there we go. So today I was going to work on my pterosaurs, but I ended up not getting them primed in time because I was too busy having fun with the game with Andrew, which was a lot of...
It was Dino-tastic.
It was Dino-tastic.
Dinosaurs wrecked Defenders X World.
Yeah.
Your fan exploded.
So yeah, it was a good game, and luckily I have Mire from War Machine Weekend as well to work on. And what I'm doing right now is I'm in the process of glazing up the highlights of his cloak. I really want it to be this kind of rich Merlot color, so I've gone really deep with the shadows on it, and now I'm in the process of kind of beefing up the highlights, but it's going to be a really subtle transition. If I can make him kind of holding or having almost a velvet in texture cloak, I would love it, because a lot of the reasons I find a frog wearing a velvet cape in a swamp particularly amusing. It's probably really hot and sweaty in that cloth, but he's too much of really cares about his image.
Dapper.
Yeah, he's a dapper frog, so I want him to be very dapper looking. So yeah, if you guys are joining us, then let us know. Really hot and sweaty in that. Let us know. I'm watching the stream to the side so I can keep hold of all the comments and things like that. If you guys have any questions over my process or techniques, please speak up. I'll do my best to narrate as possible, but I also will be pretty involved with this little guy. Yeah, so War Machine Weekend was a lot of fun, and I took a lot of the paint classes because I got knocked out of the tournament really quick, which was actually kind of fine with me because I was really interested in taking some paint classes because they had Dallas Kemp doing some, and he's the studio painter for Privateer Press, but they also had a lot of other really talented individuals giving you a lot of insight into paints, and they definitely kind of showed some different theories and practices and all that sort of stuff with their classes. So I highly enjoyed that. Now I'm glazing up the cloak, which means I'm using a really thin paint to build up the highlights in a very slow manner. Now, you could probably go a little bit...
Enjoy a dinosaur skeleton.
Good, just drop it wherever. So, yeah, we learned a lot, and I also got to spend the weekend with a lot of my good friends doing painting stuff, so I really like that. Now, this is just... The base coat was Sanguine base, then I highlighted, or excuse me, I shaded with a mix of Thamar black and Beaten purple, because I wanted to have it go really dark, but I didn't want it to be a pure black, so I had to go with an off black, so it was a pretty heavy mix of Thamar and Beaten purple. And that's a really good way to shade models. A lot of times things will be caught with yellow light, and if something's caught with yellow light, the natural shadow will be purple. So if you ever have to figure out what color shadow this thing should have, mixing in purple with it's never a bad idea. Now you can also be creative, and you don't always have to go for the technical correct highlight, because adding different colors into your shade can give different feelings and effects. If you want something to be really eerie and off-putting, You can mix in like some green to the shadows and also to the highlights. Green has a tendency to like unsettle the viewers, especially if you make it like a sickly color. Thanks, Death Guard. And then also, if you are wanting something to be warm and vibrant, making warm shadows. Also, if you want to really separate your shadows from your highlights, making a cool shadow and then a warm highlight is a really important step to kind of forcing perspective with a model. So those are all things to keep in mind when you're choosing like how to shade and all that sort of stuff. Because like a lot of times, like the videos we watch, you know, whether it's, you know, a professional painting guide or some guy on YouTube or whatever, they'll usually say, hey, if you're shading metal, always go black. You don't always have to go black. It's just a lot of times when people shade something, like use a wash or whatever, it's kind of like wash and done. But if you decide to target your washes and then like kind of build your highlights up, you can really start kind of pushing the color variance on it. So that's all important stuff to know. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this model. Not only is he an excellent model in the game, he also is a very good sculpt and all that sort of stuff. I really like the frog people in this game. So yeah, once again we're going to be trying to push that like velvet effect on him, and a lot of that will be done through lots of subtle layers and kind of building up the highlights and all that sort of stuff, but it's going to require some extreme highlighting to really kind of push that effect. So yeah, it is a slow process, and I hope you guys can see it. Maybe I need to move over here a little bit more, but it might be a little bit difficult for the camera to like pick up. The glazing method I'm doing, I'm kind of wet blending or feathering it as I'm applying it, but I'm doing it in such small steps that hopefully it should bend the eye. Or, oh, did I move more off camera?
Yeah.
I sure did. My more or less. Yep, there we go. But yeah, like feathering the highlights and things like that should really really give that gradual shift. So they talked a lot about the tease of models, and that's where you should put a majority of your focus in. So if you look at Mire, hopefully, let's see. So Mire is a frogman, so he doesn't have quite human anatomy, but he does have a face, which means he has two eyes, and he also has kind of human proportions. So he has shoulders, torso, ribs, the legs, and all that sort of stuff. So the tease, where you really want to put a lot of your focus, is going to be the face, especially the eyes, and then the shoulders, and the chest. And then everything else you can kind of like, you can almost de-emphasize the amount of effort you put into it. And a lot of the reason why you would do that is so when the person looks at the model, where their eyes naturally want to go, which is going to be the face and the shoulder area, that is helped with the amount of detail that you put into it. So it's kind of a cool technique, and I might be trying to do that a little bit with this one. So something to think about. So it's something to always be mindful of when you're working on a model, like how much effort you're actually putting into areas that the average viewer is not going to necessarily appreciate. And, you know, making a beautifully detailed, like, tabard, especially something that's hanging below skulls, may not be the best use of their time. So what I'm doing is I'm coming down and I'm feathering in a little bit of these highlights, and I'm pretty much going to call it a day here, because I don't want to call a lot of attention to the area beneath the skulls, because it's weird to draw a lot of attention to the, like, groin area. Probably don't want to lead your audience's eyes over there. So that's something to always be mindful of. Big areas like his cloak will obviously draw a lot of attention, but it will always be secondary to the face and the shoulders. So I'm not going probably as all out on the cloak as I will, especially with these like skulls sitting on his shoulders and his little headdress, especially the headdress between the point where it gets between his eyes, because that will probably be the center of attention for a majority of this piece. So yeah, if you guys are joining us, what's your current project that you're working on, or what do you want to work on, is also another fun thing. So just let me know, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Or if you guys have any questions about particular techniques, I'd love to be able to assist you guys in that as well. So yeah, just let me know. Nope, bump the camera. All right. Doing things like the highlights, you really gotta like think about where light's gonna hit, and then also creating points of interest. Like, I'm not sure if you guys can see all that well on here, but the back of his cloak, he's gonna have this little stitching across the back of it, and that'll probably be like a great point to put in like an area of high contrast. So like doing like white or tan binding to keep the cloak together. It'll push the model apart and draw your eye to that detail and the blending that you're putting the work into, or that I'm putting the work into. So I'm going to still do a little bit of highlighting with the sanguine highlight, and it's thinned down a lot, and that allows me to control and build up subtle transitions as opposed to like layering on big blocks. Last thing you want to do is destroy a lot of like detail in the model by just kind of slapping on like a bright fat layer, and then also dropping the model on the table that you've been working on, and continuously chipping the front spear. So yeah, it's this will be kind of a slow process. I'll probably have 2 to 3 more highlights to do, and we're eventually going up to like carnal pink, and probably adding in a little bit of Menoth white highlight to give it a little more warmth. So the next step on the sanguine will be mixing a little bit of sanguine highlight with a little bit of carnal pink, probably 2 to 1, because once again we don't want to blow the contrast out, and giving it a nice subtle transition will allow for the eye to blend it a little bit better. You want to make sure this is nice and thin, it flows easy. This is actually 3/4 sanguine highlight and 1/4 carnal pink. Carnal pink's a really strong color, and it's much higher than the sanguine highlight, so it makes a big difference when you have just a little bit of it. As you're working with stuff, always make sure that like you kind of be mindful of previous steps that you're doing, because you really want to be able to like backtrack and fix things that or like come back in and do details, or if you need to paint something else, it's pretty important to keep an idea of what you did. So once again, this is the thin glaze. We're putting it in the most raised areas. And then we're also coming back with a little bit of that sanguine highlight mix to kind of blend things in, to make it nice and even. And you don't want to over apply paint to it, which was something that I was starting to do and caught myself on. But if you over apply paint to the area, one, you're going to leave kind of like patches, and then two, a glaze will start acting like a wash, and it will
You roll it one.
it'll kind of roll in and be in the recesses, which you definitely don't want. So it's always important to be able to like go back and be mindful and fix things as you need to. Of course I would. Thank you, Fox.
So John, how was War Machine weekend?
It was great, Joe. You know what would have made it better?
What?
You being there.
Oh, great.
It was a lot of fun. I was talking a little bit about that when you stepped away for a minute.
Okay.
But I got to learn a lot, especially like painting techniques, because the painting classes are phenomenal there. If you fancy yourself a painter and just want to improve on painting, War Machine Weekend's actually a really great con for you to check out, just because of all the things that they offer for those looking to either get into painting or improve their painting ability. Because I had friends that range from beginners to experienced painters, and they all took something away from that weekend, which I find to be absolutely amazing. So the structured classes are really great. You know, it doesn't feel like you're in a stuffy, like, lecture hall kind of thing, but it's more of a small classroom. I think like at most you can have like 12 other people with you, and there's a lot of one-on-one where you get to ask these painters that are exceptional at what they do a little bit of, you know, how they develop their techniques that they use, and like what you could theoretically do to improve yourself and all that good stuff. It's absolutely a great time. So right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to build a highlight at the top curve of the cloak. And a lot of this will be me going back and forth. And blender time. constantly blending things. So I will need to give this a little bit of time to dry because I'm now at the point where I'm just kind of pushing paint around. So what I'll do is I'll cut a little bit of a highlight. Joe. I'll cut some highlights in on some other areas while we're waiting for that to dry. Because you always want to stay busy. So I'm doing a bit of edge highlighting on the sides of the cloak, which we are doing this. This is where the cloak will catch a lot of people's eyes. And we have this nice bright edge highlight next to where some of the deepest shadow is. So once again, doing some highlight up towards the top where a lot of the light would hit, and then coming back and blending it in with the sanguine. So yeah. Anyone who's watching right now, thank you guys for tuning in. Coming in with a bit of a blend. So once again, keeping busy, realizing whenever something gets worked a little bit too much, just building things up.
I know it's another pigmented individual.
So yeah, getting the highlight how I want it and then blending it back in with the rest of the cape, realizing that there's probably one or two more steps. And also kind of coming back in a little bit of that shadow. just to make sure that things don't get a little too bright. Especially, so now that things are getting really bright with the cape, I kind of want to come in to the areas around the cape. There's like this little net pattern on the back, and there's little holes that I want to bring up some of the brightness. As I was saying before, it's really important not to let them dry as like a wash, but just have them be wet enough to get in there and brighten up the color a little bit. And always pay attention to what's going on with the model, making sure that light is being consistent.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm using a little bit of the previous highlight, the Sanguine, to kind of come back and tone down a bit of the cloak highlights that I built up. This will, one, help transitions a fair bit, but it will also keep the cape a little bit darker.
Thank you.
Always important to keep moving. And especially on the little loincloth thing, you don't want to go too crazy with it. Just kind of do a little bit of edge highlighting. Maybe emphasize a little bit of the tears in it. But call it a day there. Because once again, the part of the model we really want to look at is going to be the eyes and the skin pattern and all that I built in. Cutting in some edge highlights on the cloak. Highlighting up some of the tears. Making sure the detail is there, especially when people are looking at them. Perfect. All right. So, setting the model down, noticing on the back of his cloak, or on this side, it's a little too rough with the transitions. So, this is where I'm going to come in with that original sanguine and basically soften that up a little bit. All right. I hope everyone else's Thursday's going well. It's a bit rainy here at Gigabytes. Nasha, do you need help? Are you sure? Coming in. A little bit of highlighting. Oh, hey, Jim. Hope it's not too late in France. Or too early? Did you order a Mire?
Huh?
Got 2 pallets of games. I don't know, David, of what?
I hope the stream is hearing all of this.
Me too. I purposely didn't cuss. He's so proud of himself.
Never a dull day. Oh man.
I'm ready. Ready, David.
Cool. So we're gonna go to the next highlight. And it's probably gonna be 50-50. Sanguine and Cardinal. It's just going to be really probably beef it up just a little bit more.
Susie, what's that?
And we're also going to be doing just putting some of this Carnal Pink on here. Make sure that's nice and thin so we can blend that into whatever highlights we're doing. So once again, while you're working on it, make sure not to overdo it, like put too much on the model to where it's just kind of like slipping around.
Mind blown.
Coming back in with that Sanguine highlight and just kind of blending up with it. And coming in with this Carnal Pink. So with the Carnal Pink, it's the highest highlight you want to do, and you want to be really sparing with it. So I'm just doing it to kind of cut in a little bit of spot highlighting, and only do a little bit on the edge highlights, because once again you don't want it to kind of overwhelm. Once again, on the pants, you probably don't want to draw too much attention to it. So for this, I'm only going to put it on the upper hip, where most of the light would fall. And we're pretty much just going to call it a day at that. And we're not even, you might just do a dot of Carnal Pink on certain areas. But once again, this is to kind of push it. And actually, we can push the brighter colors a little bit more just to get some separation from the cloak behind it. So, just doing kind of
If you stand like this, the cape flies over my face.
there. That looks pretty good. once again, coming back over here, doing just a quick kind of streak down there, hitting the little holes in his cloak, just kind of giving him a little personality.
Don't forget the dollar you like it by the best.
So yeah.
I don't have these areas, but you're
At this point, we can call the cloak done. If it ends up being too bright at the end of it, I'll just come in and kind of wash it down with the sanguine base, just to kind of darken it a little bit. But I do like the brightness of it, especially next to the dark frog skin. So it should be pretty good.
That was long and busy. I'm back.
You're back.
I'm back.
Joe, you look a little moist.
It's been raining. It's wet. And so I was just,
Why'd you go outside?
I had to take care of some things. We had some delivery. had to take care of a game. So
Oh, okay.
yeah. So question actually, I have a question. If you don't mind.
What's your question?
My question is, I have some 5-layer drawers,
Yes.
and John helped me put them together, and he suggested that I prime them and just work on the skin tone because they're mostly,
Yeah.
the berserkers. So do you think white primer would do fine for skin, or is it gray, or what would work?
I would, especially for you, I would recommend doing a white primer first.
Okay.
Because what we can do at that point is wash the models
Okay.
with a flesh tone wash, and that usually leads to a very effective skin tone, especially when you're starting out.
Okay. Now this is my brother has. So okay. So now this is not exactly perfect for primer.
Correct. So what I would do is prime inside.
Okay. If we have a room for that, I don't think we do at my house. So let's see.
Yeah, like so if you have like a garage, like prime in the garage. If you have like a basement, like a work basement, do that. With me, I have a like a boxed-in patio kind of thing, and it's not great to do a lot of priming out there. Like you don't want to prime for extended periods, but like a lot of times I'll walk outside, prime really quick, and then bring it back in and let it dry inside, and that's really important.
So white primer. I have to see if my brother has any white primer.
If you don't, we actually just started carrying Vallejo's super fine white primer.
Oh my goodness.
And I really like that as a primer
Okay.
because I've never had an issue with it fuzzing on me. And that's really important for a white primer. White primers are generally very finicky, and they have a tendency to fuzz up. So any brand that you find that you can work with and that doesn't fuzz on you, stick with it, because it'll probably be good for you.
Alright, cool.
And so right now what I'm doing is I'm working on his little turtle shell armbands, and I'm hitting it with a wash that's a mix of Umbral Umber and Exile Blue. I went a little bit heavier on the blue side because it's washing over this like brown orange, because I kind of want to tone down the oranginess of it, and with blue being the natural complement to orange, mixing them together will usually go towards like gray, sometimes brown. So, and I'm not looking to like knock the orange out of it like 100%, but I just wanted to do a little bit of it, especially we were talking before about how a great way to push up contrast is to do cool to light or cool to warm. So we'll be doing that with the turtle shell. So like the shadows will be nice and cool, and then the highlights will be bringing up some nice orange tan goodness. So yeah, with this setting and drying, the big thing I've been debating with this model is what color to do the ropes, and I think I'm going to have to start with Beast Hide, and I'll probably bring it up to a lighter color, like either Hammerfall Khaki or Jackbone. But I do have a lot of bone in here, so I don't want to be fighting with everything. Like, I don't want the bone and the wrappings to be competing for the same level of brightness. So that's going to be something I'm going to have to be mindful of and definitely work around. So yeah.
Have you a chance to play the new expansions to Monster Apocalypse?
I just played a game with Andrew right before we started the stream, and we were playing with the buildings. The buildings are amazing. They add a lot of depth to the game, so I really enjoy that. And then I was using the pterosaurs, which I got from War Machine Weekend, so I was really excited to run around with dinosaurs.
Oh, you got the dinosaur expansion? Nice! How excited were you when you
super excited. So I'm really glad that I have the dinosaurs, and I'm excited to play them. I wanted to try to get them painted as quickly as possible, but with my schedule I didn't quite get them primed to start working on them on the stream. But hopefully next stream I'll be working on Terracon for everybody.
So how do they play?
They're very aggressive, which I like, because I tend to be aggressive in a miniature game. So they don't have a lot of like defensive tech, which means they don't have a lot of ways of like protecting themselves through any like natural means. So a lot of their survivability will be through placement and trying to dodge enemy attacks by not giving them a place to sit next to you and just kind of windmill slam.
So I think next time you win the game, you should place one of your dinosaurs on top of the building and just let it have the T-Rex roar.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. So yeah, it was fun for the first game, and Andrew, my opponent, was super fun to play with, and we both learned a lot in that game.
Well, me and you should have a shot because I haven't had a chance to play it yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to that type of game. I like the miniature games that are quick and have like an hour or so to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to get a stream together where I get to teach you on stream.
Yay, that's gonna be so fun.
Yeah,
I'll take the robot, you can take the dinosaur.
Ooh. Yeah, so we'll have robots versus dinosaurs at some point, and that'll be a fun match. They're both very iconic, and they do a lot of work with each other. But yeah, Monkpok's been a lot of fun. We're actually doing the League of Annihilation right now, or the Isles of Annihilation League, excuse me, if I want to be proper with the name. And so that league is a great way to get into Monpok. It doesn't take much to get into. You can pick up a starter and basically play through the entire league if you wanted. Don't have to do much more than that. And so with that league, you get to play against a bunch of other people. You get a special map that you can only get by playing in the league, which is a big bonus. And then finally, you get to kind of meet the Monpok community, which to me is a big benefit. Yeah, I mean, like, getting to know the play group to me is always a big thing, and knowing that other people meet up and play and get into it and have fun with it is super, super big. I know me and Emily have played a bunch, and I just need to get more time so she can come up to the store and play here with us and maybe get into the league herself, because that'd be a lot of fun.
Hey, do you have a chance to look at that new game we just got in Keyforge?
Keyforge, yeah. I've actually played a demo of it, and I really enjoy it. And so I enjoy it because when I play Magic, I am mainly a drafter, or I play sealed. And Keyforge has a lot of similar elements to those formats, where you get a blind deck every time. So a lot of it is going to be figuring out what you can accomplish with the deck that you have and how you can win games versus your opponent. So To give a little preface to the audience listening, if there's people listening, I'll wait for the blender to stop. So, Keyforge, every deck you buy outside of the starter decks included in the box, the start playing box, will be 100% random and different from any other deck that you have ever owned. So that's really appealing to someone who is mainly like a draft or a seal player, because you go to a tournament and let's say the tournament is just everyone grab a pack and then start playing.
Yeah.
So you're never guaranteed to know exactly what your deck's going to be. And to me, you're on a little bit more of a level playing field versus other folks, because you are all playing with a new deck that's 100% random. So I really like that kind of.
Well, the couple of things I like about the game is, number one, I like the objective. In this game, you don't have health like in Magic or Star Realms. You actually have these key forges that you're collecting amber to activate or to unlock. Mm-hmm. And I like that aspect because you just that's the objective. So you're basically attacking and defending, just as on a side thing. But I also like the idea that each deck has 3 symbols that represents houses, and on your turn you have to declare what house you're using, and you can only use the cards from that house. And I find that to be a very interesting mechanic, because one hand you may be playing one house, and the next, I have all these cards from this house. So so you're basically trying to figure out what to do at that point. And I really love that strategy aspect to it.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of cool features to the game, and they do a lot of things that are different from other like collectible card games or even like LCGs, which is it's nice to see people still innovating. There is so basically, if you ever find a deck that you really like, it won't always be like a sealed event. There will be tournaments that will be bring your favorite deck and throw down and see how you do kind of thing. So that's always really important to have in a game like this, where you can kind of bond with and identify with a particular deck because it either has the houses you like, or because it does the thing that you want, or hey, maybe it's just a really good deck and you want to win. So those are all important things to keep in mind when you're playing Keyforge. And there's a bit of collectability with it too, because if you find a really good deck, or maybe your friend wants to play 3 specific houses and you get that deck, you can trade or sell or do whatever you want. So we'll kind of see where the market goes for this game, but we have the pre-release event this Saturday at noon, and then we have the official launch on the 15th. So we have a lot of pre-orders. We're getting more every day. So
I would be more than happy to take the customer's name down. Order anything that you're looking for. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Mark actually really, really loves the game.
Nice.
I think there's something to be said for getting like a random deck. It's really exciting because you never really know, like, is this going to be the best deck I've ever gotten, or is this going to be the houses I want, or the play style I'm a fan of? It's all random. You don't know each time.
Yeah, that's true, and I also like there's that aspect of discovery to it, where you're like trying to figure out the synergy of the deck you just got. So how all these cards pay off one another.
Exactly.
So, and you could do it, and you could be doing it while the game is going on. So you have that entire element. You could a new challenge you can add to it. You could play like, we're gonna buy a new deck, we're just gonna play, and then try to figure it out as we go along. This is, like I said, adds a new challenge to a personal challenge to you. So everything's cool.
Yeah, and so the launch set does have like a set amount of cards. So eventually, if you play enough, you'll kind of figure out all the cards that are in the set, because you will eventually run against them. But the combinations that they are put into these decks will be 100% random, and so keep it really kind of fresh.
Oh yeah.
And on that note, I think you and Fox are going to stream a game right after this.
Yeah, we're planning on it. We'll see how the schedule pans out. So, but
sure.
There's the initial plan right now. We'll have to see what we have to get done or not. So, but that's yeah. So we're excited about it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited to see you guys play. On that note, we'll probably take off soon, simply because we started a little early, and there's a lot going on, and I want to see you guys try to get your Keyforge on. So thank you everyone who has tuned in to watch me paint this frog, and I look forward to seeing y'all next week on the paint stream. So goodbye.
Bye.